Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Couple of Nurses podcast. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Peter Findra and I will be your host for today. Another interesting episode. But honestly, I feel like every week is an interesting episode, so I might be a little bit biased, but there's a lot of interesting stuff out there. So today I wanted to talk about Psych NP school. It's something that I've been thinking about pursuing. I've been kind of on the fence on it. I've been thinking a lot about NP school just because I finished travel nursing and now I'm kind of looking for the next big thing, you could say. I'm kind of a little bit over the whole traveling aspect. I feel like I did that part of my life. I am still a nurse, of course. I'm still working here in Illinois, but I feel like it's time to maybe pursue something different. So on this episode, I want to discuss, just kind of brainstorm about Psych NP school. Maybe you guys have been thinking about it, so we'll think on it together. Before we start the show, just a quick shout out to our sponsors, Liquid IV and BetterHelp. I drink Liquid IV almost every single day. I literally just had it in my blender bottle, I would say an hour and a half ago when I finished my workout and my sauna session, guys. I'm telling you, I drink it literally almost every single day. And coming from the cardiac ICU, we replenish our patients with electrolytes, magnesium, potassium, sodium, all that kind of good stuff on unit. So why aren't you replenishing your electrolytes? And since Liquid IV is a sponsor of this show, you can use code CONPOD at checkout for a little bit of a discount. Also, a shout out to BetterHelp. It's never too early, never too late to get a therapy session in. Use Couple Nurses at checkout for a little bit of a discount on your therapy session. Your mental health really matters. One last thing, y'all. Make sure to visit couplenurses.com for all of our episodes, our show notes, and also couplenurses.shop for all of our latest merch. Some really cool unities out there and jackets. So today I wanted to talk about NP school. I've really been thinking about this quite a bit. I've actually been looking at schools. I've been weighing my options. I've been looking at the cost of tuition, how much amount I'm going to projectively make, in a sense. I'm also looking at what do these psych NPs actually do, because I haven't really worked at a psych unit. Actually, I've never worked at a psych unit. I did have a psych clinical when I was in school, and that's the only time I really had hands-on experience with people, with patients that are in psych. So I was thinking, maybe the family NP route would be good, or the NP route where on the unit, more of like the acute setting, just those kind of things. And I don't know, for some reason, the NPs in the family practice, they were a little bit more appealing to me than the acute care setting. I'm kind of slowly getting over the acute care setting in a way, but I do plan on still working for quite a bit of time. I'm also still planning on working PRN if I do go to school, or part-time. So I've been kind of thinking about a lot of these things. So family practice was a little bit more interesting than the whole acute care setting route, because like I said, I'm a little bit over it in a sense. I still really enjoy doing it. I still like the ICU environment. I still like patient care, all that kind of stuff, all the things and knowledge and critical thinking and just the physical work that comes with being a staff nurse. It's just, I feel like I'm reaching that age where maybe I want to pursue something out of bedside. I am 29 years old, so I'm not old. I don't feel old. It's just like in your early 20s, you're kind of thinking about school, but you just got done with your bachelor. So you're like, let me get a little bit of break, a little bit of experience, and then go back into some kind of in that phase, in a sense. So with the NP route, I feel like it still allows me to hone in on my nursing skills, but also have a little bit more autonomy, a little bit of say what actually goes on. So the acute care NP is kind of out of the window. I don't really want to be putting in lines. I've worked with nurse practitioners on unit in the ICUs, various ICUs, medical, neuro, cardiac, and I already have a really good idea of what their scope of practice is and what they really do. And I don't know, it's just really not for me. I know the NPs that I've worked with, there were always the ones putting in lines, the ones that were assessing the patient, if they have to go on pressors, if they're acutely having an MI, do we need to give them inotropes? Do we need to maybe think about putting a balloon pump in this person, starting them on CRT? So those kind of things, which are really, really cool. It just, I don't know if I want to do that long term and always be in that environment. So then I also thought about besides maybe family NP or psych NP, I thought about maybe just getting my master's and becoming a nursing educator or nurse administrator, or maybe even looking for some assistant manager or even manager positions that I could maybe eventually reach or have a goal of attaining. But those also were my thing, because being a manager on the unit never really struck me as interesting. I feel like it's a lot of numbers based. I feel like you're in like the limbo area of between nurses and then the higher ups above managers, and you're always getting kind of pushed around in a sense where you're almost being blamed for everything, because the nurses have an issue with staffing, they have an issue with ratios, they have a bunch of issues on the unit that they're coming to you to maybe help solve. And then you have the people that are working above you that are coming with you with quotas, with numbers, with metrics, and telling you, why aren't you meeting this, why aren't you meeting this? So it's almost like you're stuck in the middle between two unhappy sides in a way. And even though I feel like I could excel at that and it'll be interesting to do and get a good idea and a good grasp on how the healthcare system works from a managerial standpoint, it's just, once again, just not my kind of thing where you're stuck in between like two pieces of bread, like you're stuck in between two different lines of defense. And plus, being a nurse manager, once again, you're also stuck back in that acute care setting. Yeah, maybe you could eventually go on to be a nursing administrator for like a healthcare firm or a bigger healthcare agency, and maybe it won't be as much of a hospital setting, or you could do the whole administrative route where you're maybe director of nursing somewhere. But once again, that didn't really interest me that too much. But the manager is still a pretty cool idea. It's just something that I don't feel like I want to do right now. But of course, that could change. You never know. I might go into like NP school or NP school and be like, damn, actually nurse manager would have been pretty cool. But for right now, I'm not really feeling that managerial position in a sense. But what has always sparked my interest was the nurse educator route, because I always like teaching new grads on the unit. When we got a new hire back when I was a staff nurse, I was always down to interview whoever's coming on. I was always down to orientate who was coming on, all that kind of stuff. I was always down to just help the floats. I'm always down for the team. You know what I'm saying? I'm a team player. I'm down for the cause, and I really liked educating people, because I know I don't know a lot of things, and I feel like educating people helps me stay on my knowledge, on my skills, because we don't use every single thing every day. So I feel like a lot of nurses maybe lose that, and by orienting new nurses, it almost makes me refresh that new nursing information and those new skills, that new knowledge that you're going to really use in the beginning. And plus, being a nurse educator, you almost have a little bit of that piece of that managerial aspect of things, but you're not really responsible for all that kind of manager stuff. You're more in the skill setting, you're more in the, a little bit more in the acute setting, but it's more of like a knowledge-driven approach. But what's also cool about it is that you're constantly looking at new research. How should we be doing things? What could we do better? Where are we failing at? What are we really good at? And you're almost guiding the flow of the unit. So you almost have a direct correlation to the unit's performance, because you're the one in charge of who needs to know what, where can we do better on, and how can I provide that education or knowledge to make this a better and smoother process, or better learning or growing experience. And then we have the family NP. So this one I actually thought long and hard about, because I've always had this, you could say, dream or this vision, or something that I've always thought about doing, is having my own clinic. Something about just seeing people maybe progress through life and just enter different stages of life. I've always found it interesting, because you're going to have those patients that come to you once every couple of years. But on the flip side, you're also going to have those patients that come to you every couple of months, every 6 months, every year for a checkup. And I've always found it cool just to maybe speak to somebody and catch up, and just that aspect of things. Because when I had my consistent primary care doctor, when I saw them every year or every couple months when I went to do my travel contracts, we always have a good conversation. We always caught up on what we were doing. And it was like a pretty cool experience, because you're not just dealing with the very, very sick of people, and you're not dealing with the dying aspect of the hospital or this acute aspect of the hospital. It's more a laid back sense where you could have a little bit of a different conversation, more of like a happier catching up conversation versus like in a hospital where sometimes it can be a really, really deep conversation about life, about what people regret doing, what they did wrong, what they could change, all that kind of stuff, because those are some strong emotions, and I wouldn't mind, or I would appreciate having the flip side of that where it's like people are coming to where they're healthy, you're having like a happy conversation, how life is moving, or they got a new home, grandkids coming on the way, they have their third kid, that kind of stuff, that kind of family dynamics was always really cool. And you don't really see much of that in the hospital because people are just focused on trying to get healthier so they could go home, or in some cases just try not to die. So then I discovered Psych NP. So Psych NP has been on my mind, I want to say, for the last 2 years consistently, because there was one point in my life where I did think about entering psychology, being a psychologist, but then I was like, maybe I need something more hands-on, maybe I wasn't sure, and that nursing came along and it kind of showed me that maybe this is more my field, this is what I'm looking for, where there's still some psychology and still some critical thinking, more acute care kind of stuff, more hands-on kind of stuff, and nursing was almost the best of all the worlds versus like a psychologist where it's just speaking to people and just more of a verbal approach to work and just to like for the career path. But the more I look into it, the more I tend to like it, just because I feel like that brings me back to almost original vision or my original idea of being a psychologist. So being a Psych NP, you get to see the full spectrum of mental health. You could say you could see people that are in a healthy state of mind but are trying to maybe improve in one aspect, maybe cognitively, maybe they just have some reoccurring thoughts, maybe some minor mental issues. They feel like they're not working their full potential, to the other spectrum where it's like full-blown schizophrenia and this person is talking to two people in the room and there's only one of us here, kind of a thing. So you get to see this full spectrum, which I always found really, really fascinating, because it's really hard to grasp or have the idea or even understand how people feel when they're in those deep psychotic states like bipolar, schizophrenia, those kind of things, because it's really hard for you to relate. Like you can relate somebody that maybe has a broken bone or going through pain or going through somebody dying, the grieving process, or maybe a little bit of anxiety, or they're just having a hard time getting past certain things. But just dealing with somebody, working with somebody that has like these full-blown psych issues is something really hard for us to tap into, because most of us have a little voice in our head, right? But not a lot of us really have, I don't want to say all of us, because not a lot of us really have like 4 voices in your head telling you 3 different things or 2 different things or 4 different things, you know? So that's really hard. Like how does that feel to have voices in your head telling you to do something, or you're seeing somebody that's not there, right? Like how does that feel? How does that happen? How does one go about life with that versus maybe being next to someone's side that has a grandma that's passing away? That's a little bit more relatable. Dealing with somebody with schizophrenia and trying to imagine you in their shoes, that's really, really hard. So it's almost like a little bit of a challenge for me, and it's like a puzzle. I always like puzzles. I always like building stuff, creating stuff, and thinking at things. So that always really drew me. Like I see everybody as almost like a puzzle, not necessarily like an object, but each person is their own individual, right? So they have their own individual lives. And what's cool is that, for example, as nurses, you all somehow work as nurses, right? But all the nurses on a unit came from different backgrounds. They have a different life story. They have different hardship, different struggles. But somehow you guys are all on that same unit, right? Like how does the world bring you to just this one unit from all over your state or all over the world or all over the U.S., right? So it's crazy how that kind of works. It's always interesting. And I just like talking to people in general and just listening to them talk about where they came from, what happened, how this happened, what causes them to do this, and if this happens, they react this way. I'm just a really big listener, and I kind of just try to figure out like what's going on, and maybe provide some kind of a solution, and not necessarily a solution where it's like, I'm going to tell you what to do, but let's almost brainstorm together about what's going on and how we can move forward and how we can find a solution that best suits you in like a mental standpoint. Like, how can we cope with certain things? Like, do you have anxiety? Have you tried the tapping method? If you haven't, let's give it a try. And if it doesn't work, let's move on from there. So I just like being able to help figure out someone's problems or help them through their problems. And nursing provided me this almost acute physical way of solving that problem, where it was more objective in the way where it was like, okay, problem is blood pressure. Okay, let's hang up pressure. Sepsis. Okay, they're vasodilating too much. Let's constrict that. Do they need fluids? Do they need that? It was more of like, this is the problem. Let's fix it. Bang, bang, bang. Objectively. Now I'm more of like thinking in more of like a diverse and like, I don't want to say spiritual, but in like a more broader way on helping maybe people through different things. But one more point I want to bring up, guys, is one of the main pulls that I have to NP school and just get my master's or some higher education is the money. So as a nurse, I mentioned this on a prior podcast, you make around, I want to say 80 to 100K a year. With an NP, the average, I believe, annual income in the US for a psych NP is about $130,000. 130K is a good amount of money. You could live very comfortably on $130,000. And if you're thinking about NP school, like imagine you making $130,000 and then your partner making, let's just say your partner's a nurse, you're bringing in $200K together, maybe a little over $200,000 together as a household income. That's not bad. You could raise a family that way. You could, have a good amount of kids. You could have a really, really good life. So the financial pull is definitely there as well. And just like the autonomy is also the issue where sometimes I don't know how to fix a problem in nursing and I can't get the order. So then this happens and I got to figure it out, or I know this is getting pushed aside and I could fix this right now, right here. If you give me the time and you give me the trust, like I'll be work for it. Or now we got pushed into day shift because nobody wants to address a problem at night. So the autonomy and a financial portion of it as well. And like I said, I've been looking at some research as well. So for graduate school, basically NP school is going to cost you about the same, depends if you're going to family practice or psych NP or any other kind of NP route out there. Its tuition is going to be anywhere from about $12,000 to $20,000 a year, which is a little bit of a cost, right? It's about $7,000-8,000 every 6 months you got to give for that. But I know a lot of hospitals, they have partnerships with universities where they offer you a little bit of a discount on credit hours. So it does seem like a lot of money up front, but the fact that you're going to pay up to, let's just say, let's just go on average $15K a year. So you're going to pay $30K for the next 2 years, but you're already making that money back the first year of graduation, right? If you're going from $80K to $130K or $80K to $110, $120, you're making that money back technically after your first year. So that $30K investment already pays off after the first year or two of being a ANP. So if you're looking at it from a financial standpoint, from an accounting standpoint, or from a person that works with money, that's a really good investment. Like, what investment out there is going to give you your money back plus more after the first 1 or 2 years of you completing that investment, right? Not a lot of things out there. But another thing that is kind of pushing me a little bit away from it, I want to say pushing me away from it, just making me think about it twice, because I was never really good in the classwork. I was never really good at papers. I was really never good at the homework aspect. I was decent on exams. I passed nursing school, so obviously I had to pass with at least a C, right? C's get degrees, But yeah, so that was kind of maybe pushing me away in the beginning, because I was like, damn, I just did these 4 years of undergrad and then also prereqs to become a nurse. Now I got to go back and do it again. That was kind of a little bit disheartening and disinteresting for me at that sense, because I'm not really that good with book stuff. I'm more of like a clinical based kind of a person. So for example, if you tell me to read this and then take an exam, I'll do decent. But if you tell me to read this and then perform it, or how would you solve this with these notes, you could say, that I do better in that. I do better in like real life application than I do in school and in book stuff. But I just part of life, you can't have it always your way. I entered healthcare. I knew what the expectation was. I entered nursing. I knew it was theory and book heavy. And that's probably one of the reasons why I also entered it, because I was never really good at school. So I kind of wanted something to challenge me in a way to almost prove to myself that I could be a smart person, right? Because education, high school was never hard for me. I was never interested in high school, but then nursing became a little more interesting. So I was able to kind of hone in on that a little more. And the fact that I really like psychology and really think about becoming a psych NP, I think it's going to allow me to perform even better, because this is a big interest of mine. Psychology, psych, those kind of things are very interesting to me. So if you're interested in it, you're more likely to be better on it versus taking the geriatric section of nursing school, where it's like, man, arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, bed sores, all that kind of stuff was not always the most interesting to me in a sense. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you guys next Friday. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode and are maybe thinking about doing NP school or maybe even pursuing a master's. Thank you so much.
Oh, I gotta go. I've been working, told them please don't hit my phone. I'm in my zone, bruh, just leave me alone. Was on the road, but I swear I'm coming home. Now the drinks on me, I think we need a toast. See, I did it for me. Now my